Hi YouTube. Today I'm doing a recipe inspired by atticus9799, Noreen. It is her crock pot salsa chicken. However, I'm not using chicken, I'm going to use pork. And these are country ribs, which is basically pork loin roast cut into a rib shape. And that's my main departure, and I'm also not using a crock pot. Other than that, it's very similar. There's probably some minor differences. I think I'm using onion and she's not. She also basically used the dump and cook method, which is perfect for crock pots. But because I'm not using a crock pot, I've decided I'm going to brown my pork first just to give it a little extra flavor. Let's see, I'm using about 1 medium onion, which I've sliced into pieces. That'll be separated when I put it into the pan. I will saute those after I saute the meat. And then I'm going to be using about a cup each of canned peaches, which I've cut into chunky things, and about a cup of pineapple. These were the pineapple chunks. I also cut them down a little bit smaller, and about a cup of salsa and a little bit of garlic powder. A great way to cut your fruit, by the way, or any other thing that you might be wanting to cut down smaller that's wet and slippery, is to just use a pair of scissors. Works great. Alright, so let's get started here. I have my pan preheating, and I would say on a medium-high heat is what you want. It's going to be different depending on your stove. Mine, I have it about a 5, but I may have to turn it up in a minute when I get the meat in. I'm using bacon grease. You certainly don't have to. You can use olive oil or whatever oil you like or you think is healthy. Let's see if I can get a better shot of inside the pan here. I'm just going to let that warm up for a couple minutes. And I think I might turn this up higher to start. I can always turn it down after the pan gets warm. If you're using a cast iron pot like I am, this is enamel coated cast iron, you'll know that it takes a little while to heat up, but then once it's heated up, it holds the heat very nicely. And that's one of the reasons I like cast iron. Alright. Oh, this is a big... I'm going to have to cut my meat into smaller pieces here. I didn't realize I had it folded over and it's one big old slab, so I'm going to cut that in half. If you've never had pork country ribs, they basically cut it into slices. So I'm going to leave the slices, they don't cut it all the way through, and I'm going to leave it that way. It may fall apart while it's cooking, but in the meantime, it'll help hold it together a little bit. And you see here how the meat has been cut into sections. There's a fatty side and a lean side. I'm going to put fatty side down first. I have 2 chunks of it, so I'm going to brown each one separately. Take it back out of the pan onto the plate. And then I'm going to saute my onions. I'll be back when I'm ready for that. By the way, pork and chicken are very interchangeable in recipes. Just about any recipe that calls for chicken, pork can be used and vice versa. So keep that in mind. Also, I'm not trying to cook this pork through. I'm simply getting it browned on both sides, and that will help develop the flavor as it goes on. Well, I'll leave it alone for a few minutes. If it's sticking, chances are it's not done yet. I'll be back. Okay, my second piece is in the pan, and I just want to show you this is what we're looking for. Sort of a nice golden color here. That will give us more flavor as we cook our dish. Okay, my pork is done. I've thrown my onions in the pan. You can see the brown bits in the bottom. The onions are going to help deglaze, which means to take that brown bits off the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to saute them around a bit until they take on a little bit of color, but not a whole lot. I see I need to add a little more oil. I'm the kind of person that would rather add more oil than start out with too much. So a little more bacon grease goes in. And at this point I'm also going to put a little bit of salt on the onions because that will, pardon my blocking the camera, but I don't have a cameraman to help me out. I don't have a Rick to help me with my cooking. The salt will help draw the moisture out of the onions and season the dish. Alright, this process is going to take a little bit of time, so we will come back. But I did just want to show you, you can see I think that those onions are starting to take on some of that brown color. Most of that is from the bottom of the pan just getting the color. I'll be back. Alright, I've decided to just go on ahead rather than do those onions more because the bottom of my pan is scorching. So at this point it is just going to be a dump. I'm going to dump everything in. We have our peaches, our pineapple, and now the salsa. And I'm going to stir those around just to, again, bring those bits off the bottom of the pan. I also think some wine in here would be pretty good, but I'm not going to do that today because I should have done that before everything else if I was going to do it. So pretty, isn't it? Then I'm going to put my pork in. Oops, wait, let me add the garlic first. Garlic powder, get that stirred in. You could use fresh garlic, I just didn't feel like it today. I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit more too. Again, we want to get it to a simmer. Put the meat back in. Get it kind of nestled in there. And then this is going to slow cook on top of the stove for several hours. Another thing I'm going to do different in this recipe is I'm not going to cook my rice in the pot. You could certainly do that. There's no reason why you couldn't. I choose not to because I like my rice a little bit firmer. So I use my rice cooker. I also prefer the medium rice to the long grain or quick cook rice, and for that reason I'm probably not going to add any more liquid. I might come back and add a little more chicken stock. That's certainly a personal call. It depends on how soupy you want your dish and whether or not you think there's enough liquid. There's basically enough here to just cover my meat, and that's about the way I want it. Alright, you see how it's starting to boil. I'm going to turn this down, way down. We just want it to do a cozy little simmer for hours and hours. So that's going to come down. I will check it in about a half hour just to make sure that it's gently bubbling. At this point we put our lid on and walk away. You can check it every 30 minutes to an hour and just be sure it's cooking to your satisfaction. Alright, that's it. I'll be back when it's done. Take good care, folks. Oops, nope, not the end yet. I'll be back. Okay, this is the gentle boil I'm looking for. Just a gentle bloop, bloop, bloop. Because remember, it's going to cook for a long time. Oh, I always forget something. I also added a bay leaf just because I think that would be good. You can really put any spices you like in this. It's really up to you. I also added some black pepper. Okay, I'm at the point where we're about an hour away from our finale. I've tasted it, decided it needed some more pepper, some more garlic. I added a splash of wine for acidity because it was a little sweet. And I'm going to add a bit of chicken base, which is like bouillon. If you don't have chicken base, add bouillon. Now the reason I'm adding the chicken base is that it needed more salt, but rather than just adding salt, the base adds salt plus more flavor to the gravy. So I'm going to just mix all this in and let it go for at least another hour, at which time I'll taste it again and again readjust the flavoring as is deemed necessary at the time. Okay folks, we're about an hour away from done time. I've tasted the sauce. I've added a couple of things that I know my family would prefer. We like things a little bit on the hot side, so I added some hot sauce. And the reason I added the hot sauce was because I thought it was a little bit sweet, and the hot sauce has a little vinegary taste to it. I also added just a shot of white wine, again to cut the sweet a little bit, and I added a big spoon of the already chopped garlic from the fridge, and I think that's it. So I'll be back when it's finally done. Okay YouTube, we're at the home stretch now. I am going to take the meat out of the sauce. Excuse me for the noise. Get around to the other side of the camera here. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Now another thing I'm going to do is thicken the gravy or the broth. However, I personally like it on the thinner side, so I'm going to take some out for me. I hope I can get the meat out in one piece. I don't think I can. It's so tender now, it's just falling apart. So what used to be 2 pieces is probably at least 4 now. Wow, I wonder if I can get this out. I might not be able to. Here's a big chunk. Whoa, falling apart. Okay, well, maybe we need the spider instead of the tongs. It's not really necessary to take the meat out. I just think it's easier to thicken the gravy without the meat in there. But isn't that nice to know how tender it is? Looks really good. Smells good too. You see that? Looks wonderful. Alright. If there's any meat left in there, I'm just going to deal with it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do before I thicken is take some gravy out for me. Some of the thinner gravy. And then I'm going to turn the heat up because I am going to add, I've mixed about a half a cup of water, about a teaspoon of cornstarch, and the whole idea is to get it boiling, although some say to do this before it's boiling, but it's, I guess, a personal thing. And then you just slowly add it in. I will show you. I'm going to get my spurtle out here to do that. You want to make sure it's mixed up really well so that the cornstarch is suspended in your liquid. And then you, whoops, some on the bottom of my spoon. Get it all out. By the way, the Mrs. Volpe did a great video on how to make your own cornstarch. Excuse me, potato starch. And it was a wonderful video, so check out the Mrs. Volpe. If you haven't done that before, I'll try to link that below. Remind me if I don't. So anyway, you just stir this in. And I do it slowly. I don't do it all at once because I don't want it to turn into paste, what we jokingly in our family call it sliceable gravy. But I do want it to be thicker. I want it to come to a boil. probably going to end up having to add more, but I'll wait and see for a minute. Let it come to a boil. Stir it a little bit. It's looking thicker, but I know my family, they really do like thick gravy. I don't know. It's a personal choice, I suppose. So I'm going to go ahead and plop the whole thing in. Like I said, that was about a tablespoon. And you really just need enough liquid to suspend the starch. Then you let it boil and stir. And the last thing you'll do is taste it and see if it's the way it tastes good to you. Not to me or anybody else, but you and your family should be the judges as to whether or not it is seasoned and spiced the way that you like it. Okay, that's looking quite a bit thicker. I hope that's thick enough for them. I think it should be. If not, I'll just add some more. You know how that goes. So at this point, I'm turning the heat off. And then, as Noreen would say, I'm going to make you a plate because I know you're hungry. Okay, so here's our pork with salsa, peaches, and pineapple, inspired by atticus9799. I'm serving it with some green beans and asparagus left from last night. Hope you try it. Hope you like it. Take good care, folks.